1 year back, the World Health Organization appointed an independent panel, a panel to probe what went wrong with the world, how the outbreak in Wuhan turned into a global catastrophe. This panel was supposed to deliver an impartial, independent and comprehensive review of the global response to the pandemic. They began their work in September 2020. Now we are in May 2021. Their report is out and it does not blame China. It does not name China for its cover-ups. It does not call out China for the crackdown on whistleblowers. It does not even question China's delay in reporting the outbreak in Wuhan. So what does the report do? It delivers a lengthy and detailed explanation of how this pandemic began without naming any country or leader. This should be compulsory reading on how to sit on a fence if there is such a course. Before I tell you what the report says, let me tell you about who wrote it. A panel created by the World Health Organization, and this is different from the panel that investigated the origins of the pandemic. This panel, the one we're talking about tonight, focused on how the outbreak became global. It was led by two individuals, Helen Clark, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the former President of Liberia. This report is called COVID-19, Make It the Last Pandemic. It has 86 pages. It will be presented to world leaders next week when they meet for the Global Health Summit, an event that is being hosted by the G20. Now for the contents of the report. What do these 86 pages say? Question number 1. Was this pandemic avoidable? The answer is yes. The report describes this pandemic, and I'm quoting, as a 21st century Chernobyl moment. It could have been avoided. Why wasn't it? 3 reasons, 3 failures that created what they call a dangerous cocktail. Number 1, poor choices by global leaders. Number 2, an unwillingness to tackle inequalities. And number 3, a lack of coordination. Put together, these 3 factors allowed the pandemic to turn into a quote-unquote catastrophic human crisis. Question number 2, how did this crisis begin in Wuhan? The report does not offer any real answers. It tries to reconstruct a chronology of events. It says the emergence of the virus was characterized by a mix of some early and rapid action, but also by delay, hesitation and denial. By whom? They have steered clear of the 5-letter name, so we'll say it for them. China, delay and denial. What is this investigation based on? And I don't know how to say it with a straight face, but I will. This is based on a review of WHO documents and interviews. They found that China had started sequencing the virus well before they even informed the WHO about an outbreak. Again, the report does not name anyone in China, any agency or official. It has some footnotes on the silencing of critics and the cover-up. So you could say it goes something like this. China had an outbreak. It started sequencing the virus. It told the WHO much later. And by the way, it also silenced critics. 2 reports critical of the Chinese establishment found a mention in the footnotes of this report. Question number 3. What about the role of the World Health Organization? Again, the investigators pulled their punches. They identified 2 distinct failures of the World Health Body. 1, it waited too long to declare the outbreak an emergency. The report says the WHO should have raised an alarm earlier instead of waiting till the 30th of January 2020. Failure number 2, the World Health Organization discouraged travel bans, initially at least. The report says this advice constrained rapid action to stop the growing infections. Helen Clark said that as the virus was spreading, vital information was being hoarded and delayed.
Whilst the virus was spreading, information was being hoarded and decisions were delayed whilst waiting on responses to laborious exchanges of official emails. As information began to arrive at WHO, the organisation was not sufficiently empowered to investigate, validate, and then confirm at speed that a dangerous outbreak was occurring.
What about the role of Dr. Tedros? Again, the report fails to assign any blame, nothing on how Dr. Tedros was praising China's response in the early days. What about the conflicting advice on human-to-human transmission? The report does make a mention of it, but it sounds like the panel is giving some retrospective advice to the WHO. They say that the World Health Body should have told countries to quote-unquote assume that human-to-human transmission was occurring. So what's the panel's conclusion about the WHO's role? It admits that the World Health Organization, the WHO, dropped the ball on more than one occasion. An emergency could have been declared early. But member states, too, did not take the threat seriously.
We believe, however, that even with the current systems, a public health emergency of international concern could have been declared by at least the 22nd of January. Even following the declaration on the 30th of January, February was a wasted month. Despite clear warnings, far too many countries believed it would not affect them, and they adopted, in effect, a wait-and-see approach.
Again, the co-chair of the panel does not take any names. The report goes on to recommend major reforms to the WHO. It should be empowered to swiftly conduct investigations into new outbreaks in any country. It calls for the creation of a new Global Health Threat Council. It suggests that the WHO Director General should serve only a single 7-year term in office. An incumbent should not be allowed to run for re-election. Now, these reforms are necessary. But will any reform be effective if the panel decides to downplay its own findings by reducing China's crackdown on whistleblowers to footnotes, by refusing to hold those in powerful positions to account, whether it's the WHO Director General or China, which, by the way, is one of the biggest donors to the World Health Organization? How can any reform work when a door is left open for a powerful country to hide the facts and then get away with it? The world is hesitating in calling out China for its cover-up. And Beijing is now openly leveraging this silent exoneration. The International Federation of Journalists has released a report. It says China is now using this pandemic to boost its global profile. This report gathered data from 54 journalist unions in 50 countries and territories. More than half of them said that coverage of China in their country is now more positive. In some countries, China has become the source of the most accurate information about the Wuhan virus. So here's what's happening. After unleashing a virus on the world, Beijing is controlling the global narrative on the pandemic. This year, it dictated the report on the origins of the virus. It refused to give raw data on early cases. And now, with global leaders declining to blame it for the outbreak, China has the opportunity to whitewash all its sins. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.